And we're about to get started. I wanted to first introduce myself. My name is Barb Ellers, and I will be helping as a facilitator for this webinar, How to Fund the Next Ministry Project. In this webinar, we will be also monitoring questions in the Answers tab throughout this webinar. So if you do have a question, please post them in the Questions and Answers tab at the bottom of the window, and I will try and bring them up in conversation as we proceed. We will also have some question and answer time at the end of this webinar. As I stated before, my name's Barb, and I am the relationship specialist here at Converge Cornerstone Fund. And what I do is I will work with a church from the dreaming stage of their project all the way up until I get a completed loan application with all the documents. And then at that point, I do hand it off to my colleague, Kirk. Kirk?
Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for joining the webinar this afternoon. Hopefully we're able to answer some of your questions. I do act as the Associate Director of Church Lending, so I work with churches really from the beginning of the project in the dreaming phase, working on getting financials in order, all the documentation to underwrite the loan, and really all the way through till closing, depending on if you're purchasing or if you're building. I may be involved a little bit longer than that, but primarily walking you through the underwriting stages and approval of your loan request.
All right, so during this webinar, some of the questions that we will be addressing are: where does your church start? How often, how do we know if and when we can afford an expansion? Why should our church partner with Cornerstone Fund? And what steps can we take now? Kirk, why don't you go ahead with the first question?
I'll go ahead. A lot of times, the very first question that we get from churches is, where do we start? Where should we start? Where should we begin the conversation? And a lot of times this can be a single individual within the church who has been tasked with the job of collecting all the information of what is going to be needed, who should we be talking to as we look through. Some churches are at different points throughout, obviously, that process. Some churches know well in advance that they may be building on a property and expanding. Some churches, it's kind of a last minute type thing where an opportunity comes along to purchase a building and they need to move on it quickly. So this question of where should we start is a little bit relative to what you have going on in your current situation. But regardless, we always like to give some of the basic information that will help at least get the conversation going. And one of the first places that I always start is with the 5W questions. Why, who, where, what, and when. It may seem a bit elementary to start, but as we dig into it a little bit, I think what you'll understand is that these really are visionary type questions. It helps churches really begin to not just answer some of the questions of, why are we doing this? Who are we doing this for? Where are we building, or where are we looking to buy? What are we looking to build? Those types of questions. But it also begins to build your team around. And I'm going to talk in a few minutes about what it looks like to build an additional team as well. But let's start first with these 5 questions. Why? Why are you looking to build, and why are you looking to build now? Why are you looking to purchase? And why are you looking to purchase now? We engage with churches that are at multiple levels, churches that have been around for a very long time that just need to expand, or maybe they need to renovate and renew some of the space that they're in. Maybe you're a church plant that's been renting. And, one of the things that we're seeing here recently with a lot of our churches who rent public spaces is that they no longer have access to those public spaces because of COVID-19, and now the opportunity has opened up for them to be able to purchase and to look into something different. So it's always a good question to ask of why. This is the heart of your vision as you present this to not only your team, to your congregation, as you begin to pull in realtors and architects and all those different types of things. Is why are we looking to build? Why are we looking to purchase? Why are we looking to expand? That's really one of the first questions that you need to begin tackling. And included in that then comes the next question is, who are we looking to expand for? Who is this project that we're looking to take on? Who is it for? Understanding the who of why you're doing what you're doing in terms of an expansion will help understand some of not only why, but also what you're looking to purchase. Who are you trying to reach? Perhaps you've realized that your student ministry is blowing out of the water and you're growing leaps and bounds, and you need bigger space. Maybe you realize that your children's space is just not adequately sized enough to be able to take care of the needs within your congregation. Answering the question of who you're building for, again, will help point those things in those directions as you begin to either look for space, as you begin to work with architects and designers on designing a space for you. They can begin to pull all those things together as they understand who you are building for. The next question is where? Where are you looking to go? Do you have space on your property to expand? If you're a church plant and you've been renting or leasing for a while, maybe you've been meeting at a school or a YMCA, and now you're looking to purchase somewhere. Answering the question of where is always a big part of this conversation as well. For instance, if one of the things that we see quite often is churches who are young church plants who have been renting or who have been leasing, and then they start looking for property, but they realize that the property that they're able to get their hands on and or buildings that they're able to get their hands on and afford are located significantly further away from where their demographic and target audience are. What are the impacts that that's going to have on your congregation if you move out of a demographically specific area? Answering the question of where and understanding what the needs are, getting an idea of what does real estate, whether you're looking for a property to build on, or whether you're looking for a building this turnkey, or that you're wanting to renovate into your space, understanding where you're going to look for those spaces will help limit, and it will help you start to put some of those pieces together as you begin to plan financially as well moving forward, because you can begin to understand what the costs are and different questions like that. What are you looking to build? Again, if you're expanding on your property, is it a certain ministry that you're looking to build? Is it a new worship center that you're looking to build, and the size of that? Is it education wings? Are you looking to, if you're looking to buy a building that is already standing, are you looking for something that not only has space for worship, but you're looking for classroom? Do you do small groups in-house, or do you do them out in homes within your congregation? All of those different questions of what exactly are you looking for, those are questions that need to be fleshed out as you continue to have these conversations and continue to build your team. And then the last W is when. How soon are you looking to move on something like this? Have you been sitting on a piece of land that you purchased a while back and now you're looking to build a campus on it? How soon are you looking to do that? Do you plan to do a capital campaign? Do you plan to do additional capital raising? Maybe you're in a situation like some of our churches now where you got to move on something quick because otherwise you don't have anywhere to meet. And we see that quite often. But understanding the when will, again, help us as a lender who is coming alongside you to partner with you, help you understand what exactly needs to be put in play and put in place in order to pull this thing together. So always, we always start with these 5 very top level 50,000 foot questions of why, who, where, what, and when. And getting answers to those will then help you as you start working with us and putting together the financial analysis, understanding what exactly is needed from a financial standpoint, but also as you start to put together your team that are going to really be the people surrounding you to be able to pull these things off. And as we talk about the team, let's talk specifically about who are the people that you're looking to put around you to support you as you continue to move toward this endeavor of an expansion or taking on new property. Building your team is always a key aspect. And I always say, we like to say, at least around the Cornerstone Fund, we shouldn't be talking to the lead pastor all the time. It's not that we don't like you, but you have other responsibilities that we want you focusing on. There are other people in your congregation, hopefully, who are more skilled in certain areas, particularly when it comes to maybe buying property, real estate, building on property, those types of things. So again, it's not that we don't want to have conversations with our lead pastors. It's that we want to free you up, and being able to put a team in place to work on certain areas and to answer certain questions for you is always a key. So your church leadership team, you need to find the people who are the detail-oriented people. Who are those people who you know beyond a shadow of a doubt will not let anything fall through the cracks? They are the ones who dot every I and cross every T. Those are people that you need on your team. Who are the people that are the finance people who get numbers, who understand what it takes to be able to pull together a profit and loss statement and balance sheets and attendance figures and all those different types of things. And they get excited when you're giving them a responsibility to pull those information together. Who are the people that care about what color paint goes on the wall and what kind of carpet and tile and hardwood floors go into the building? Those are the types of people that you need on your team so that they can lead those conversations. Who are your ministry leaders who understand the needs, the basic needs for children's ministry space or youth ministry or worship and sound, tech, ABL, all those different types of questions? Those are all people that you want to surround yourselves with as you continue working. And that's just internal to your church's team. Beyond that and expanding beyond, you need to start thinking, especially if you're looking at buying land and or purchasing a property, who are the real estate agents? Who are the people who understand the local market and who understand where you can begin searching for a piece of property, whether it be raw land or whether it be a piece of property that has a building on it? Now, obviously, if you're looking at renovating an existing space and or expanding on current property or building a new building, having that architect, having a designer, having a contractor in place, those are key pieces of your team that you want to bring in early. And as we talked about before, have them involved in those conversations of those 5 W's. You know, allow them to understand what you're looking for, who you're looking to build for, why, obviously the when question, so that they can be involved in that conversation too. And last but not least, your lender. A lot of people wait until the last second to bring a lender into the conversation and try to bring us up to speed in terms of what's going on. And in reality, bringing the lender in earlier. And one of the things that we do, many of you know this, but we offer free financial analysis for the sole purpose of helping churches from the very beginning dream, understand what the needs are, put steps in place to be able to move toward that and bring that dream to fruition. So bringing your lender in early will allow us to get an understanding of your organization, an understanding of what your finances are, but also help us understand what it is you're looking to do, why you're looking to do it, when you're looking to do it, and begin to work with you on putting all the necessary pieces in place to be able to bring the project through to completion. So that's always when we get the question of where do we start? Where do we begin? How do we get this conversation going? Those are always the question and the concern that we always bring back to our churches. Barb's going to talk a little bit more now about how the Cornerstone Fund team can come alongside you, even in that waiting period between this is a dream as we're collecting this information and bringing this thing through to reality.
All right, so I often I'm the front door of Cornerstone Fund. And so one of your first conversations will be with me, and I will kind of find out, typically I love talking to churches, like I said, just in the beginning, dreaming stages of a church. And as I try and get the information of all the 5 W's, we would, one of the first things that I would bring up is what are you doing with your capital campaign funds, your savings? We have different investment options. As many of you know, we are able to do and do lending with churches, Converge churches, because of churches and investors that invest in Cornerstone Fund. Without those investment funds, we would not be able to do the ministry and be able to lend out funds to Converge churches. And then also those funds are a perfect place, the investments are a perfect place for you to put any of your reserves or the capital campaign funds. Right now, that interest rate of the church savings investment is 1.375, which is typically a little bit higher than the savings account at your local bank. And this is a liquid investment where you can add any additional funds or take out funds as needed with no penalty. And so that kind of just is a little bit of a highlight. That's one way I would start that conversation of where are you putting your funds? Are you earning an interest on those funds, the capital campaign funds? The next is the different type of loans that we have. I'll try and get that information from you. What are you looking for? Are you looking to refinance? Are you looking to purchase land or purchase a building? And, will there be any construction or renovation needs? A little bit about the type of loans that we have. Our current interest rate on our loans is 4.5%, and that's with a 20-year amortization loan. The loan would adjust, the type of loans that we do, the loan would adjust every 3 years to the cost of funds plus 2 or 3%. Our loans do not balloon, but they reprice with no new underwriting expenses. We also, this is very important for churches that are under 10 years. We do give a 0.25% discount on all of the new church plants because we do feel so passionately to serve and desire to serve church plants of Converge. Again, like Kirk had mentioned before, we hope that you will come to us sooner as opposed to later. There are so many things that we can help walk you along that process and help you as you take those next steps. One of the things that we offer, as Kirk had stated before, is the financial analysis, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But in that financial analysis, that'll help you figure out what those next steps might be in your process, whether how much you need to save in a capital campaign fund, how much you need to put down as a down payment, and help you with those next strategic steps. Next question that we'll be answering, and Kirk will be answering, is how do we know if and when we can afford an expansion?
Sorry, I was on mute there. One of the first questions that we get as we start digging into the financials is how do we know if we can afford it? If we're looking at a certain piece of property or to buy, or if we're looking at building. And a lot of times churches, as I'm working on financial and walking them through the financial analysis, they want to know what exactly is it that you're looking at? How do we know how much we can afford? All those different types of questions. So I always start, the best place to start is to understand what I call our guardrails for lending or our guardrails for approval. It's understanding how we underwrite our loans. What are we looking for? How do we structure our loans in order to pull this information together and get you where you need to be? These guardrails of approval really are the barriers that keep things in line. It just as guardrails on a highway will keep you on the road. The guardrail for our lending is to help us stay in line, to help us understand what it is that is going. So obviously you've got two different things. You've got the loan to value, that's looking at the collateral value of the property and our ability to lend against that up to a certain point. And then you have your debt coverage ratio. That's understanding the financials and how the church can afford and cover the debt that they are taking on with the new loan. Let's dive into those just a little bit more for a second and talk specifically about first loan to value. Our policies allow us to lend up to 75% loan to value. That valuation is determined by the lower of either the purchase price of the building or the appraised value of the building. I know there's a lot of questions that come in about, well, what if they differ? Most of the time when you're looking at commercial property, those valuations tend to come in very closely. But at the end of the day, we will take the lower of the two and lend against that up to 75%. If you're looking at raw land that you will eventually build on in the future, we can lend up, by policy, we can lend up to 50% on raw land with a maximum of the 10-year loan. And people ask all the time, why is that? Why do you only lend up to 10 years? Why do you only lend up to 50%? Well, our idea is that we don't want churches sitting on raw property for a really long time. We want to encourage you. We want to work with you on building on that property. You are acquiring raw land so that obviously you can expand your ministry on it, and we want to work toward that in the long run. So the idea is to hopefully motivate the church along in building on the raw land. So loan to value, and we'll look at a sample analysis here in a minute. You can see it more in play. But loan to value is, again, looking at how much is the collateral worth versus how much can we lend to that, up to 75%, or again, against raw land up to 50%. The other guardrail that keeps us in line is the debt coverage ratio. What can the church afford? And that's a little more involved, obviously, because what we're looking at is your financial. We're getting an understanding of what is your income as an organization, and what are your expenses that are going out as an organization. We require a ratio of 1 to 1, 1.1 to 1, 1.1 to 1. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you just look at, say, like something like 3 times our annual income, or why don't you look at, something like other lenders may look at it? Well, one of the things that we would say to that, and one of the answers that I would say to that, is we understand, having been in church lending for 65 plus years now, we understand ministry. We are a ministry ourselves. We get church ministry. That's the only type of lending that we do is church ministry. And we know that when it comes down to it, the expenses that you have at the church versus the income that you bring in are essentially 1 to 1. Churches aren't in the business of going out and making a huge profit at the end of the year. You're in the business of doing ministry, and the money that you bring in from the tithe and from the offerings of your congregant allow you to do the ministry that you have in place. And that includes the building that you own and the staff that you have, obviously all the additional fixed expenses, and then the ministry items as well. So the last thing that we want to do is to come in assuming, because, oh, well, this church brings in $1 million a year, we can assume they can take on a $3 million piece of debt. Instead of just assuming that, we want to actually look and say, well, let's dig into that a little bit more, really understand where you are spending your money, what you're spending your money on, and then begin to build this financial package around that. The idea, again, is if you are expanding, the last thing we want to have to do is to see you decrease or make strategic cuts to your budget, meaning decreasing staff, decreasing ministry expenses, decreasing, whatever else it may be, just so that you can build a bigger building. The idea is if you're expanding, you're also expanding financially as well. You're growing financially as well, both in what you bring in, but also the cost that it takes to support that expansion and that growth. So as we look at a 1.1 to 1 ratio, we're really looking at every line of your budget. As we look for profit and loss statements, we're saying, how much are you spending on salary? How much are you spending on ministry? How much are you spending in certain areas? Not so much to critique what you're spending it on, but so that we can begin to understand what the growth potential is moving forward. And as we pull together, you've heard us talk a lot about these financial analysis, as we pull those that information together, the idea is to get an understanding, not just of where the church has been and the growth that we've seen, but also to be able to project into the future as to where the church is going to go. So loan to value, debt coverage ratio, collateral and what we can lend up against, how much can the church afford? These are the two guardrails that really drive the ship in terms of putting together your loan package and understanding exactly what you can afford. Let's look at that on a little more, I guess, rubber meets the road type of scenario with a sample underwriting summary analysis. If you've worked with us before, if you've done financial analysis with us before, you've seen at least some version of this financial analysis. But just to give you some idea, and please don't lock us in on any of the rates or any of the numbers that you see here. This is simply just an example. But in this case, as you see in box 3, in the financial summary square, the church's income is roughly $615,000 a year to a total expense package of about $602,000. So in this scenario, the church is looking for a loan of about $650,000. So if you can just imagine with me, the church is looking for $650,000 to buy a piece of property. In this case, the property is for sale at $875,000. That's referenced in box number 4 with the proposed building cost. Also in box number 3, just to walk you through a couple more things that you see there, their current rent, what they are currently paying out every single month or every single year is $60,000 a year. And then I've also built in increased operational costs. A lot of churches forget that the expenses that they have currently when they're renting or they're leasing will go away, but owning a new piece of property does increase costs. There are insurance costs, there are maintenance costs, there are utilities costs, there are different operational type expenses that come in. So one of the things that I always do when I work with churches, especially churches looking to buy a new building, I say, keep in mind that you will have those increased operational costs, and let's build that in. So that gives you an idea of what we're doing. We're pulling out the expenses that will go away. In this case, it's the rent that will be replaced with a mortgage, but we're putting back into their expenses at least some projection of what they will need to spend money on in association with the building moving forward. All of that is an idea of getting to that last line there in box number 3, and that is the net monthly income. That's what is your serviceable debt amount. It's how much money you have available to service debt with. A $650,000 loan amortized out over 20 years at a rate of 4.625 in this case is just shy of $4,200 a month. So that's what allows us to those ratios that we're looking at. So the 4,792 divided by 441.98 gives us that 1.1 to 1 ratio that you see back in box number 1. So in this case, obviously I would go back to the church and I would say, yes, we can lend up to $650,000 against an $875,000 sale price. And yes, I see that in this scenario, the church can afford this mortgage, and we would begin to take the next step toward approval. One thing to keep in mind, and I always bring this up with churches, is if you're looking to buy a building that is $875,000 for sale, knowing that we can only lend up to 75% of that in $650,000, that does mean that the church will need to bring that additional $225,000 to the closing table at the time of closing, in addition to closing fees and things of that nature. So it's always important, again, as you're looking at what can we afford, is looking at your financials and saying how much, in this financial analysis, how much do we have on a monthly or a yearly basis in net income that we can service debt with? But also, as we look at property, or as we look at buildings, or as we look at land, we look at building, how much can we feasibly believe that this property is worth? And from that, how much capital may we have to raise in order to make this transaction come to be? So that gives you some idea of what we're looking at from an underwriting standpoint. I'll walk through just real quickly on the next slide some of the things that I'm looking for just to begin a basic analysis. Obviously, 3 years of prior financials. That would be your profit and loss statements and your balance sheet. We like to see 3 year-end statements and then any of the current year. So if you're on a calendar year, if you were submitting something to me today, we would look for 2017, 18, and 19 year-end financials, and then 2020 year-to-date. Attendance figure, that's a weekly average attendance figure over those same number of years. Again, the idea is that we're looking for where are the trends, what are the trends going on? If you're growing financially, are you also growing with the number of people that are attending? And then giving units, again, very important thing. We want to be able to see what the spread out is of your giving per your giving units. The idea there is if, 40% of your income comes from one family, there lies a larger risk than obviously if that's spread out over more families in the event that that one family were to leave. So we do like to see a giving unit breakdown. 52-week giving analysis, that's looking at the trailing 52 weeks. We understand there's certain seasons within church ministry where giving will fall back, or there are greater priorities within the church. So we always like to look at a full 52 week to get a full understanding of where are things at, looking at this week compared to this time last year, and where did that fall in, and where might we see these things go. In the event, if you're looking at a renovation and or a building project, a source and use of funds is huge. That source and use, what we're primarily looking for is from a standpoint of a usage, what are your contracts? How much are your contracts? What are the budgeted estimates that are coming in on that project? How much is it going to cost? And that includes not just construction, that may include ABL equipment, furniture, fixtures, and equipment that is going into the church. Obviously, audio and visual type equipment that's going in. We need to see the whole picture to get an understanding of what the total cost of the project is. And lastly, construction information and or if you're buying a piece of property, property listing, so we can get an idea on the property. There's obviously additional things that we would need for specific situations, but this gives you a basic overview of some of the information that we would need as we start pulling together information for your expansion project. Barb's going to talk now a little bit about why your church should look to partner with the Cornerstone Fund.
Yes, thank you. One of your questions might be, why should we partner with Cornerstone Fund, when we have our local bank down the street? And we really like to tell churches about what makes us stand out. One of those is that we commit to a partner with your church and your ministry throughout the entire term of that loan. An example of that would be that when you are, let's say an example would be COVID-19, or if you have a pastoral transition, and those transitions really hurt and can hurt or decrease the church's giving. If you were to call us and talk to us, Kirk, it would be the one that you would contact, that we will work with a church and come to agreeable repayment terms to help the church get back on track. Another thing that helps, that we stand out, is that your repayment helps fund ministry growth. As you're paying your mortgage, the principal payment allows Converge to lend to other Converge churches. And the interest of your payment goes to starting and strengthening churches. And because of this partnership that we have over 160 loans, and the churches that invest with us, 1.8 million, we give right back into Converge. We did that in 2019, and we are set to give back 1.8 million again this year in 2020. That money, 1.8 million, that goes to help Converge start and strengthen churches. And again, just letting you know how much and how passionate we are to come alongside and ministry driven. Since 1996, we have given over $20 million to the ministries of Converge. Again, when the COVID-19 hit just recently, these funds, the 1.8 million part of that, went to help the IM team and the church planning grant. We were able to, the church planning team was able to give a grant out to those churches that were in need, because we knew that those were the most vulnerable during the COVID-19 early stages. So what steps can we take now? Well, the first step that you can, that we would suggest is to give me a call. Our information, Kirk and my information, will be on our last slide. But what we've been saying throughout this whole webinar is that it's never too early to have that conversation with us. Just when you are in the dreaming stage, trying to figure out which way to go, whether you are going to build or purchase a building, where do you start? Give us a call. Give me a call. And one of those things that we offer is that free financial analysis. And in that free financial analysis, all we would need is 3 years profit and loss statements and a year-to-date profit and loss statement. With that, once I have those profit and loss statements, I'm able to hand those off to Kirk, and he will take a look over them and set up a meeting to give you that analysis. So right now, if there's any questions, we are here to kind of answer any more specific questions that your church or yourself might have.
Yeah, let me turn your attention to the question and answer box. Feel free, if you do have a question, go ahead and send those over to us. I've had a couple that have come in that we wanted to address off the top. One question that we often get is, can we lend funds to rehab or to renovate a property that you're currently leasing? Unfortunately, the answer this time is no, we cannot. Being a mortgage lender, a first mortgage lender, that means that we have to take collateral in the property that you own. With a lease agreement, obviously you do not own the property, so therefore we do not have first collateral rights to that property. So, we would encourage churches who are looking to do renovation on buildings that they are currently leasing to do capital campaign raising, to work with their district on putting together those capital campaign fund in order to do so. And we are obviously here at the time that either the opportunity comes along to buy that building, which we've seen quite often, and or when you are ready to look at another building or another piece of land that you may potentially build on. Another question that we often get is, how old does a church have to be? We work with a lot of church planting. Obviously, within Converge, church planting is a very big part of who we are as an organization and part of our vision moving forward as we continue to start and strengthen churches, not only around the country, but across the globe. But one of the questions that we get is, how old is the church, or how many years worth of financial do you have to have? It's a difficult question to answer, because in some cases it's relative to what the church is going on and how much you're looking to borrow. I will tell you that we have worked with churches who planted and are launched, less than a year ago, who we have put loans in place for to help them buy buildings. Now, there are scenarios and situations that made those loans less risky, to where we were much more willing to get involved. For instance, the church had significant resources set aside that allowed them to put a large amount down. Additionally, the amount that they were actually looking to lend or I'm sorry, to loan from us was not a huge dollar amount. So when it comes to it, I would always fall back on saying we want to see enough to where we can build trends. So enough history of the church to where we can build trend, but at the same time, we are unique in that we're not like a bank that's going to tell you you got to have at least 3 years financial before we even take a look at you. We will begin the conversation. We'll begin the conversation early. We'll put together those financial analysis and really start pulling things together. And if now is not the time, one of the things that we say quite often is, we never say a cold hard no, because the reality of it is that there's always a pathway toward something. Let's just figure out how to get there, and let's work together on figuring that out and building the step, putting the steps in place and getting there as quickly as possible.
One of the questions that we have is, do we provide resources for capital campaigns? We do not personally have resources. I have a list of different capital campaign consultants that churches have used in the past that I can help in, that we can give you if you contact us. Other than that, we also have some material that some Converge churches have used for capital campaigns that they are willing to share with any Converge church that asks. So we can make that introduction, but us personally do not unfortunately have anything that we are able to do other than make introductions to others that do have resources for capital campaign funds.
We've got another question here, Barb. On a new building project for a church plant, what is the loan limit based on? Is it finished project, appraised value, or current assets? If there are current assets, obviously we do take that in consideration if those assets are free and clear. But one of the things that we always do on a new building project is we submit plans and cost estimates to an appraiser for what we call an as-complete appraisal. It's looking at the property that obviously the new improvement is going on and taking in consideration what the new property value will be once that improvement is in place based on the plans and the cost estimates that come in for that. So we will get that new appraisal. That new appraisal will then be the benchmark that we set for the collateral value on that, and we can lend up to 75% loan to value against that. So, if you're looking at if you're sitting on a piece of property that's worth $500,000 and you're looking at $1 million property, looking at $1 million building project, we'll submit those plans and cost estimates into an appraiser and get an updated value on that, of which we will set the loan amount against. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to shoot them our way. Either put them in the box here, or as Barb mentioned, our email information and everything is attached to this slide. Take a screenshot, or you can be assured that we will be sending this information out by email as we finish up here today. So never hesitate, shoot us an email if you've got specific questions regarding your project. Get us involved early. Happy to assist, happy to help, happy to work with you. And again, thank you so much for joining us on the webinar today.